Now we're ready to talk about CO2 control. If you ordered your LI6400 without a CO2 injector, you must use a buffer volume on your inlet, on your air inlet, which is located on the right side of the instrument. And this air inlet has a red cap around it to protect it during shipping. There is a nut that comes in your spare parts kit that allows you to attach tubing to the air inlet. A buffer volume could be anything like a bucket with an inlet and an outlet. And one of the hoses would be open to the atmosphere, and one of the hoses would connect up to the air inlet with that nut. And the reason we want to do this is the LI6400 is an open system, which means ambient CO2 is coming into our system. And in order to control CO2, we need a stable incoming CO2 concentration. We don't want the incoming CO2 to be moving around a lot. So the size of the buffer volume that you use really depends on the environment where you're using the instrument. If you're outside in a well-mixed environment, your buffer volume does not need to be as large. But if you're in a room or in a greenhouse, you may have to use a much bigger buffer volume than this. If you purchase the LI6400 with a CO2 injector system, it will not require use of a buffer volume. Complete CO2 control is provided by a CO2 cylinder as well as by our soda lime that we referred to previously. The CO2 injector source assembly comes in two parts. One part is the cylinder cap, and one part we call the regulator. We'll first talk about the regulator. The regulator assembly has a cigarette filter that's in this column, and that filter is responsible for scrubbing out any oil that may be in the cartridges. This filter should be replaced every 25 cartridges if you buy the cartridges from Lycor. If you obtain cartridges from another source, it's a good idea to check this filter regularly to make sure that the oil is not building up in the filter. If the oil makes it beyond this filter, it will clog up this copper tubing and make it up into this flow restrictor, and it will degrade how much CO2 you're able to achieve and the speed at which your mixer achieves desired CO2 set points. To replace this filter, simply remove the top cap, and then you can look down inside of that assembly and see your filter. And to remove that filter, you will find a filter removal hook in your spare parts kit, and I will show you how to use that. So to remove the filter, you need to remove the filter removal hook from the packaging. And you'll notice the hook has a circle on one end that you can grasp, and the other end has a hook in it designed to catch the filter. To remove the filter, insert the hook into the filter holder assembly, and then turn the hook so that it catches in that cotton, and then simply pull up and you will remove your filter. You can inspect the filter and see if there's any yellowing or if there's oil that's built up in the filter and it needs to be removed. To put in a new filter, remove it from its packaging and double check to make sure that there's no paper around the filter. Some cigarette filters have the paper on them already. The ones that you buy from us probably do not have the paper on them. And then go ahead and turn the filter between your fingers to make it smaller so that it will fit well down inside of the filter holder assembly. Then push the filter down with your finger, and if you look in the cap, you'll notice that there is a plunger inside the cap, and that will push that filter so that it's further down and in the right position. Around that plunger, there is also an O-ring that make sure that this assembly is sealed when there's a cartridge installed. Go ahead and replace your cap. Once you've replaced your filter and replaced the cap, we can talk about how to pierce your CO2 cylinder. If you look at the top of the regulator assembly, you will see that there is a piercing pin. And around the piercing pin, we have a small O-ring. And these O-rings come in a package. You get 25 of them when you order 25 cartridges, which means that you should replace that O-ring with every cartridge that you buy. To insert your cylinder, we want to insert the large end into the bottom of the cap. Once you've put your O-ring around the piercing pin, go ahead and make sure to keep the regulator assembly upright while you place the cylinder cap on top of the piercing pin. And go ahead and tighten just until it feels resistance. Then take your hands opposite of each other and give a quick twist, which will pierce and seal the cartridge in one motion. Before you put the cylinder, the source assembly, on the console, go ahead and make sure that you have the O-ring in place, and that will seal this source assembly to your console. And then the CO2 source assembly attaches between your two chemical tubes on your console. And you'll notice that there are two knurled nuts, just like we were using for our chemical tubes. So the source assembly is placed between those two, and you'll feel that you're in the right position because you're right beneath the handle bar. So you can just feel that you're in the position, and then you can go ahead and tighten both of the screws. To check that you have it tightened, you can simply wiggle it a little bit and make sure that there isn't much room for movement there. And you'll know that that assembly is tight on the console.